So I wanted to kind of explain the intention behind creating this database for AOO events, um, and to give you a very sort of a broad understanding of it. It was created for several reasons, actually. They all surround accuracy and efficiency. So years ago, I ran a nonprofit organization, and at the end of every month, they had to compile these reports for different government reporting and different private donor reporting. And a lot of that information was all exactly the same. It's just it had to be, put into multiple different reports. So I took a couple of courses on how to create a database using Microsoft Access, and it cut down my end of the month reporting time to about half of what it took me before. So when I went back into the events industry, I decided to do the same thing because a lot of the data that's used in event reporting, whether it be budgets or orders or things like that, have all the same data as well. It just has to be distributed differently. So I had the very basics then. And so when I joined Dave, and Dave said, well, let's expand on doing more capabilities for the database. We launched that venture together. So number one is to reduce the redundant data entries that you have to do. So on a spreadsheet or on a Word document, if you're using those things, obviously whatever you're filling out has to be filled out with name and address and phone numbers and titles and all this other stuff. So it's over and over and over again. So building it into a database, which allows it to be housed in one location, then you just build the reports around it that distribute it to where it needs to go. So first and foremost was to really reduce the amount of redundancy you needed to fill out forms. I would say conservatively that any event will have up to 20 different reports that are necessary. There's reports for events, could be contact sheets, proposals, budgets, contracts, change orders, service charge calculations. They can include statements or payment schedules, P&L, payables lists, commissions, expense reports, production audit reports, packing lists, value manifests for international, division and division audit reports, and then vendor report, their quote requests and orders, and auditing capabilities for figuring out whether or not you included discounts and so on and so forth. Right down to labor and staff sign-in sheets, rosters, per diem breakdowns, travel and room assignments. This is just to name a few. So the idea here is to just put in the basic information that you have one time, and then in your development process, you'll identify those people or those organizations that all that information will be distributed to those different reporting centers. I mean, there's other reports as well. There are sales reports, sales and marketing reports. There's over a dozen of those already built into this system. And then there's labor reports for payroll. There's expenses by a single job. So you can look at the expense from everybody in one job, or you can look at the expense of each person for every job they've done. So it can be a time parameter, or it can be a job itself. So there's a lot of reporting capabilities that this just pulls together and infuses with much less effort than if you were using either Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. So number two, it was really to think about the ease of the development. There are certain things that when you're putting together a proposal, they take time, and they really shouldn't take that much time. Like data integrity. If you're repeating data a dozen times or more, then your likelihood of error is a dozen times or more. Or it just goes up. It's not flat. So if you have a database and you know that you've got the correct information one time, put in years ago, or you put in yesterday, that's going to stay the same. It's just going to go out. So you always know that the information that you're reporting from is true and correct. Now, development and budgets and so on and so forth, when there's garbage in, there's garbage out. So you have to be careful on those entries. But again, you don't have to look 12 times. You can look one time and say, okay, there's an error. I need to fix it. It will fix it across the board then. The other thing using documents and spreadsheets is the formatting issue. So if you're putting together a proposal and you have that you're using a template on a Word document, you still have to go back and be concerned about how it's laying out. How's it being formatted? You may have to tweak some things. Spreadsheets are the same. Built inside of a database, all the reporting systems, you don't worry about it because it's always going to come out exactly the same for every single document that you print. And then lastly on this one, formula consistency. So in Excel spreadsheets, although you can protect those fields or cells, there's still a greater likelihood that there could be an error or a corruption in your formulas than you would ever have an access, because general users don't have the ability to go underneath to change formulas. So you know they're always going to stay consistent. Another thing that was part of this was just being able to look at an overview of all of the reporting so that you know that you're staying on track with things like your P&L or your vendor orders and things like that. So for instance, when you're building a budget in this vehicle, you're building different layers of budget. So you have an intake form, then you have a discipline or a phase form. Those are more like chapters of titles of a book or chapters of a book. Then you have line item forms, and then you have order forms. So you're building all of these levels at one time, right? So you're going to develop your budget, then you're going to work on the orders that are going to give you the amount of money they're suggesting that you charge the client in order to stay in the profit margins that the company has set. So you can look at these things in real time at any time in your development. So say, for instance, on a P&L, if you've got 10 line items and you've done orders for all 10 line items, then you can look at your P&L and make sure that each one of those is in alignment with what you expect for that particular phase to be. Even more so on a production detail, that's another report that gets built simultaneously as you are building your budgets. You can look at that one line item and make sure that you're in alignment with the profit margins so that you know you're always going to win. If you maintain the guidelines of how to build these budgets, you will never not know where your profits are. You will always know. And then on vendor orders, sometimes when you're working with all these different documents, then you have to refer back to different documents to figure out, oh, I'm going to pull this number into the P&L, I'm going to pull this number to the general budget, I'm going to pull this number. So you're reaching to other locations. This houses everything in one. So you always have the most up-to-date information, always at your fingertips going into the system. You don't have to guess what document you need to pull. Was this revision 1? Was this revision 3? None of that matters. Real time holds all that information at one time as you develop the project. Excuse me. So lastly is about data retrieval. So data retrieval is about, you want to be able to put your fingers on information that you may have gleaned 5 years ago. And who remembers 5 years ago? So you can look up searches by an item you ordered, or a vendor you ordered it from, or a client that you had worked with in the past. If you remember the event that they had done, then you can always refer to that event to find out what vendors were were the appropriate vendors to use, and in what area of the country or what area of the world that they're in. So the searches are extensive. You can search on um, date parameters. You can search on the type of event it was. Was it a birthday? Was it an anniversary? Was it a corporate incentive program? Was it an award show? You can search by theme. Was it a carnival? Was it a laser show? Was it you get the gist. It's the searches are extensive. There's also vendor categories. You can categorize a vendor, so you can easily pull up on a search and report what vendor was supplying rentals for this. Was it a pink elephant that they gave us? All these things. So it really cuts down on the time on research, because you've probably already done a lot of research and you don't need to recreate the wheel. So you just go back to a search engine and you can very easily find it without having to dig through files. Then there's an event copy function. And this is, I know everybody can copy a Word document. So from one Word document to another, they copy it and they can reuse that if they've done a proposal before. Same with Excel spreadsheets. But this takes everything from the intake form all the way down to the order level, and it copies everything into one. So if you're doing a similar event from a year before or from a different client, but you want to use um, um, the exact same ingredients per se for that event, then you can copy that over and then make minor tweaks to all of those areas of vendor orders and things like that that you need to make in order to make that particular one make sense. But you don't recreate the wheel again. You're simply changing some of the items within those ingredients to match what you need for that particular event. So in a nutshell, this was the basic reasons was to bring the amount of time it took to be able to develop and then maintain a proposal that that it would ordinarily take if you're using another Word document or Excel spreadsheet. Now, I say for myself, I know the system well because I wrote it. So I can say, I estimate that I saved myself about 75% of the amount of administrative time it takes to do anything with an event. But I would say that if you're a novice at this and you don't really know the program that well, but you're in it, you kind of know it, you can still save as a novice user 25 to 30% of administrative time to be able to get projects done. So this was the entire reason behind developing this, was to be able to make it faster, easier, simpler to find information, repeat information, and distribute that information to a very, very large number of reporting systems. So that is that. Let me know what you think.